This is Sky News at 6, our top stories. A post-Brexit boost for Theresa May as Donald Trump promises a trade deal will be reached very quickly. But he's on his own on climate change as 19 of the G20 leaders agree to disagree with the president's position. Mission almost accomplished in Mosul as Iraqi forces announce they're on the brink of victory. 50 years of pride, thousands join London's LGBT march, but has the Rainbow Parade lost its edge? Facebook shares plans to build a community offline. And the Lions snatch a draw from their hosts to tie the series with the All Blacks. A very good evening to you. Now, President Trump says he expects to reach a powerful trade deal with the UK soon after it leaves the European Union. Speaking after he met Theresa May at the G20 summit in Germany, he spoke of his very special relationship with the Prime Minister. But the US President remains isolated on global warming, with all 19 other world leaders reaffirming their support for the Paris Climate Agreement, a deal rejected by Donald Trump. Our political editor Faisal Islam reports now from Hamburg.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All eyes at this summit have been on President Trump's new relationships with the world. Economic cooperation, this summit saw America take a very different direction. And a Britain wanting to be front of a queue for trade deals isn't going to be at the forefront of the criticism. Faisal Islam, Sky News at the G20 in Hamburg.
Well, let's go live to Hamburg now, and our diplomatic editor Dominic Waghorn. And Dominic, in Poland the other day before the G20, Donald Trump very critical of Russia. How's his relationship with Vladimir Putin looking now? Well, I do apologise for that. We will try and get back to Dominic as soon as possible when we can. But of course, whilst the world leaders brought the G20 summit to a close, thousands of protesters have been marching on the streets outside. Well, I think we can go now to Sky's Alex Rossi, who reports from one of the demonstrations.
Well, this is what remains of one of the officially sanctioned protests, Solidarity Without Borders, it was called. Dusk arrives, enjoying a few drinks perhaps before they go home. But the police obviously still are going to remain here, and they will be keeping their fingers crossed that there isn't a return of the violence that we saw over the last couple of evenings.
In Mosul, Iraqi forces are expected to take full control of the city in the next few hours as Islamic State's defensive line collapses. The Iraqi army has been fighting to reclaim Mosul since October. Now commanders say they expect to declare victory imminently as the militant fighters are encircled in a small pocket of the old city. Sky's Ashish Joshi has this report.
The victory has been proclaimed before, but prematurely. An indication of just how important Mosul is. Islamic State to regroup and strike again. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
A woman and 3 children have died after a house fire in Bolton. Greater Manchester Police were called to the house shortly after 9 o'clock this morning. A man managed to escape from the house and is currently in a stable condition. A 14-year-old girl who died after the school bus she was travelling in collided with a bin lorry in Birmingham has been named as Holly Brown. Tributes have been paid to the teenager on social media, with one person saying they were heartbroken by the news. No arrests have so far been made. A law firm has suspended 2 of its staff after a poster was reportedly put up around Grenfell Tower, offering legal support to those affected by the disaster. The poster was headlined "Free Legal Support" and carried email addresses for the 2 trainee lawyers. Their employer, Lee Day, says an internal investigation is now underway. Police in Florida have released footage from the fatal car crash involving tennis star Venus Williams, which they say proves she was driving lawfully at the time of the accident. Officials say the CCTV footage from the entrance to her gated community shows Miss Williams entering the junction on a green traffic light during the incident on the 9th of June. A 78-year-old man who was a passenger in the vehicle which collided with the star was fatally injured. His family is suing Miss Williams over his death. Now, Jeremy Corbyn has repeated his party's plans to end austerity and lift the cap on public sector pay at the annual Durham Miners Gala. The Labour leader promised to invest in the NHS, housing and education, as well as end the nightmare of the Conservative Party. Well, our senior political correspondent Jason Farrell is in Westminster for us now. And Jason, I have to say I was at the rally myself last year. Completely different circumstances for Jeremy Corbyn this year because, of course, back then he was facing a leadership challenge.
Well, that's right, Rebecca. And of course, if you were there last year, you'll know that his speeches go down very well. And he's always had the support, even during that leadership challenge, of the trade unions, of climate change. OK,
Jason, interesting stuff. Thanks very much for that. Now, a late penalty helped the British and Irish Lions snatch a draw in their final match against the All Blacks in New Zealand. The result in Auckland left the three-match Test series level, with the two teams sharing the trophy. Sky's Enda Brady has more. This is Sky News. Coming up, why Facebook is building real-life communities near its home in California.
To add Sky Sports, go to sky.com/sports.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. Let's find out now what's coming up in the sports.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can't get enough of the Lions. Today we'll bring you the very latest reaction we've got to that and the latest from Formula One as well at 6:45.
OK, thanks very much for that, Nick. Look forward to that. But first of all, Facebook has announced plans to build 1,500 homes. That's for its employees in California as it tries to deal with a shortage of housing near its headquarters. The social media firm says it wants to create an entire neighbourhood for staff, and it plans to provide services, including a grocery store and a pharmacy. But is this latest move by the tech firm really such a new idea? Sky's Mike McCarthy has been to find out.
When the roads and the homes don't suit Facebook's needs, the company builds its own. Victory is a matter for pure speculation. At least we know the Victorian version provided a lasting legacy. Mike McCarthy, Sky News, Saltaire, Yorkshire.
Now we've got some breaking news to bring you about Romelu Lukaku, who of course plays at the moment for Everton but is rumoured to be moving to Manchester United in what's believed to be a £90 million deal. But he has been arrested for raucous partying in Beverly Hills in California, of course in the United States, and we will bring you the very latest on that as and when we get it. But now let's take a look at the weather.
Australia welcomes a bright day as clouds drift through European skies.
Rain will take over much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the north and west of Ireland tomorrow, whilst England and Wales will be pretty cloudy. Before then, most places will have a fine evening, but northern Scotland will be wet and windy. Rain in the north will clear into central Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwest of Ireland overnight, but it will turn more patchy, with very little making it into eastern Scotland. It'll be dry just about everywhere else, and it will stay quite muggy in the south. England and Wales will be rather cloudy on Sunday morning, with the chance of a shower, whilst Northern Ireland, the northwest of Ireland and central and southern Scotland will be largely overcast with rain at times.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, colour, music and smiles on the streets of London as thousands of people join the annual Pride Parade.
Summer.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. Our top stories. President Trump says he expects to reach a powerful trade deal with the UK soon after it leaves the European Union. The US president is isolated on global warming, with all 19 other world leaders reaffirming their support for the Paris Climate Agreement, which he's rejected. In Mosul, Iraqi forces say they expect to take full control of the city within hours as Islamic State's defensive line collapses. Well, let's get more on our top story now and go back to our diplomatic editor, Dominic Waghorn. He joins me live now from Hamburg, where the G20 summit has come to an end. And Dominic, how is the relationship between President Trump and Vladimir Putin looking?
I think it's worth bearing in mind what was at stake in the background to the meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin has been accused, and it's, I think, the firm conclusion of American spies that he has orchestrated an attempt to subvert US democracy.
Quite quickly.
And Dominic, in the last half an hour or so, we've heard that the Chinese president has called for more international peacekeeping for North Korea.
Yes, and the meeting with Xi Jinping is arguably much more important than the meeting with Vladimir Putin, which was closely watched. But it's this relationship between America and China that is absolutely vital. That the trading relationship between the two countries has been the dynamo powering global economic growth for the last decade or two. More progress, more Chinese pressure on North Korea in this meeting, and we'll see what comes out of that later.
OK, Dominic, thanks very much for that. We're going to stay with this story now because some have called the Hamburg summit the G19+1, America versus the rest. So does Mr. Trump mind being the odd one out? Well, joining us now is Sir Christopher Meyer, former British ambassador to the United States. Good evening to you, Sir Christopher. First of all, how did the president fare?
Well, I think he's flying back to the United States right now, I think. And if I were he, I'd be pretty satisfied for the moment with the way the thing has gone. He won't care a damn that he was the odd man out on climate change, because he will consider this to be a badge of honor. He will come back to the United States and will say, I stood up to all those other countries who would destroy jobs in the US, and I got them to put into the communique something about clean fossil fuels and so on and so forth. So on that thing, climate change, which has been the big breach between the United States on the one hand and the 19 others, he will take pleasure and enjoyment from it. On the Russian stuff, I think he's going to have to be very careful, because the Russians, including Putin himself, are now on record as saying that they think Trump agrees that the Russians did not interfere in the presidential elections last year. And as Dominic Waghorn says, there's a whole bunch of people who will argue to the contrary, not least America's own intelligence services. So that is going to be a question to the White House, which I suspect Trump and his people may have some difficulty in answering.
And of course his daughter caused a bit of a stir because she stood in for him at a G20 meeting. What kind of message do you think that sends?
Well, one of the messages is that she's extremely important in the White House. She does have an informal position as an advisor. I think there's a lot of steam here and not a lot of light. Frankly, I wouldn't be too anxious about this. It's the way Trump does business. We've all got to get used to it. If we're going to deal with the United States and its president, we're going to have to deal with stuff, rather unusual stuff like this. But it's a pinprick in a set of discussions which have been of much more importance than this.
And of course, Theresa May has had a horrendous month since that snap election. But today, Donald Trump saying he's confident of a trade deal between us and the United States. Is that a coup, really, for Theresa May?
Yeah, I mean, I think Theresa May is one of the big winners from this. The biggest loser is Angela Merkel, President of Germany, because of the chaos in Hamburg and her decision to go ahead with it in a city and not in a remote country place. Now, Theresa May is not a...
Oh, I do apologise. I think we seem to have lost Sir Christopher Meyer there, but we will try and get back to him if we can a bit later. Of course, we're speaking there about the G20 summit in Hamburg, and of course, President Trump has now returned back to the United States. We saw him taking off from Hamburg earlier on. I think we can go back to Sir Christopher now. Yeah, do pick up on what you were saying if you can still hear me.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think Theresa May is one of the big winners from this meeting, because she's had a terrific endorsement from Donald Trump for a US-UK trade agreement. She's had the president of China, perhaps more importantly, saying this is a golden age, I think was the phrase, for British-Chinese relations after Brexit. And she's had a pretty good meeting, firstly with the Japanese Prime Minister, and I think also the Indian Prime Minister. So if international conferences can reinforce your position, Theresa May will return to London reinforced.
And how about Donald Trump? Because he did confirm he's going to visit Britain. When is that likely to be? And what do you think the response and reaction is going to be from people here?
Well, I think Donald Trump sincerely wants to come to the United Kingdom. He has accepted an invitation to pay a state visit. That's a great thing, and he will love it for all the well-known reasons. But he personally, and his wife in particular, will have witnessed the horror of the demonstrations in Hamburg, much of which was directed against him personally. So one of the things he'll be wondering is, if I go to London, will I be treated with the respect to which I am due, or will I be faced with 10,000 protesters running through the streets of London, and I'll be holed up in my hotel or in Buckingham Palace or wherever it is he's going to stay? So I think we're not going to get a date for this state visit anytime soon. I mean, I can't be sure about that. I have no particular information. But that is what I think. He will want to wait and see whether the tide turns on him personally, in opinion, in the UK.
OK, Sir Christopher Meyer, thanks very much for your time this evening. Interesting thoughts there. Now, tens of thousands of people have joined the Pride Parade through central London today. This year, the march was celebrating 50 years since homosexuality was discriminalised in England and Wales. Sky's Fraser Maud was there.
In 1972, 2,000 people took part in the first Gay Pride March, London.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up in the sport, could England's former...
Did it well.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. Let's get a check on the sport now.
This programme is brought to you by Vitality Health and Life Insurance.
Oh, country dancing.
Getting active brings its own rewards.
Thanks, Rebecca, and time for more on the British and Irish Lions, whose head coach Warren Gatland says he's proud of his team, who drew the final test against New Zealand 15-all. There's more live on Sky Sports News HQ. Roger Federer is 5-all in his first set. More on that on Sportsline at 7:30.
Getting active brings its own rewards.
My mum used to carry me around in her mouth.
Well, let's take a look at the weather now.
As a warm day ends in Africa, delicious aromas fill a steamy evening in Asia.
Well, rain will take over much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and north and west of Ireland tomorrow, whilst England and Wales will be pretty cloudy. Before then, most places will have a fine evening, but northern Scotland will be wet and windy. Rain in the north will clear into central Scotland, Northern Ireland and the northwest of Ireland overnight, but it will turn more patchy, with very little making it into eastern Scotland. It'll be dry just about everywhere else, and it will stay quite muggy in the south. England and Wales will be rather cloudy on Sunday morning, with the chance of a shower, whilst Northern Ireland and the northwest of Ireland and central and southern Scotland will be largely overcast with rain at times. Northern Scotland and the south of Ireland will be dry and sunny, but it will be pretty hot again in the south. Rain over Scotland and Northern Ireland will pep up during the afternoon, extending into much of Western Ireland. England and Wales will brighten up.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, presidential stand-in Ivanka Trump's presence raises eyebrows at the G20. We'll have all the latest on that and plenty more after the break.